Many successful entrepreneurs trust their instincts. It would seem that they have a sixth sense when it comes to business. Deb Davis is a woman that follows her instincts and can make tough decisions based on what she knows is right. Deb, a former restaurant owner and recently retired nursing home food supervisor, was looking for a hobby. She was suddenly inspired by her sister, who had been preparing home-cooked meals for her daughter, a busy school teacher.
Her daughter would bring over the food in the morning. My sister would cook it for her. When she got done teaching and after she did whatever she had to do after school, she would swing by my sister's house, pick up the food, and take it home, and she had a great meal. What a great idea. And so my sister, which is my best friend, we threw these ideas around, and I'm like, why not start a business and have good nutrition food for families?
Turning prepackaged home-cooked meals into a business didn't happen overnight. Having owned a restaurant in the past, Deb worked out a business plan as she tried to find a practical way to package and serve her meals.
Probably for about 4 or 5 months, I would make different recipes, package them up how I thought they could be packaged, and I sent them to my nieces and my nephews and my sister and family members and friends and said, follow these instructions and see how it comes out. I want the good, the bad, the ugly. And they're very honest.
As she gained confidence in her product, Deb believed she could sell up to 3,000 meals a month. With the blessing from her sister, Deb and her husband Brett created a business plan and launched Sisters Homestyle Entrees. To get the business off the ground, they went to their bank to get a small business loan.
When we first went to a bank, we had a very small business plan, and Brett had gone in to kind of see where the loan was at. And absolutely, and Brett will never forget this day because he took our paperwork across the desk and said, we just don't really feel that this is a good idea. And, we can do something else for a loan, but we're just really not interested in doing a business loan. But the same bank, we went there and we took some of our property that we owned, we took out a mortgage on one of our properties.
So, working with money from a mortgage loan from one of their rental properties, Deb started looking for a location where Sisters Homestyle Entrees could call home. Their search started in Humboldt, just 10 miles away from their home in Badger, Iowa. A city of over 4,000 people, Humboldt is known for its beautiful Iowa landscape, showcasing the banks of the Des Moines River. It's also the hometown of Frank Gotch, an iconic wrestler who became the first American to win a World Heavyweight Freestyle Championship. It was here that Deb found a storefront on Sumner Avenue in the downtown business district.
When we walked in, the building was shambles. Honestly, to me, it smelled. It just looked like a bulldozer went in there, and there was items all over. And I looked up, and the ceiling was kind of the old-fashioned tin ceiling. And Brett, my husband, was right in front of me, and I tapped him on the back. I said, this is the building I want.
I'm looking at, the cost of retro in this building, and she's looking at the that tin ceiling and saying, I love this building, it's cool. And I'm looking at, okay, but there's some serious issues with this building. It's a bank repo type deal, and it's got a lot of work to do.
Deb followed her gut feeling. They purchased the rundown building on Sumner Avenue and renovated it into Deb's first corporate kitchen, doing much of the heavy lifting themselves. In January of 2011, the store opened. Deb began cooking and packaging meals in family-sized portions. In just the second month of business, Deb sold over 200 family meals.
And I went home to Brett and I'm like, oh my God, I did it. I have customers coming in, I'm cooking for them, it's great. I mean, I was just like this is great. But it was 1 o'clock in the morning too. It wasn't like I came home at 5. And it was so exciting. I was ready, I'd get back there at 6 o'clock in the morning and absolutely be reared up to fill that next order.
The popularity for her meals grew, but soon Deb was receiving requests for single-serving entrees. Her instincts told her to listen to her customers. Over the next year, her sales jumped to 13,000 meals a month.
People were ordering meals for the whole month. And that's when you're kind of struggling, like, okay, how am I going to get that?
The more her business grew, the more problems Deb had to solve. One of the earliest and most unexpected problems was freezer space. Freezing each meal before delivery, freezer space was at a premium. So Deb and Brett went shopping.
We pulled up to this restore. We opened up the door and there was a line. It was Frigidaire freezers and they had nicks and dings on it. There had to be freezers and fridges and there was dishwashers. There was just tons of items. And we made a deal with them. We purchased 20 of them at that time. And it took probably 3 days for my husband and his friends to go back and forth with trailers to get all these freezers. But that's how we started when we started to grow.
And then, we had all these, okay, now how are we going to get it plugged in? Then we had to get an electrician involved to get more electricity into the building. And then so we had that all lined up. Got to the point where that wasn't enough. So then we had to, get a bigger freezer and a big walk-in cooler. And then that wasn't enough. So then we had to add on another small walk-in cooler, and so then that wasn't enough. And then we bought this big, huge freezer. We had our Christmas pictures taken inside this freezer. All of our employees were in the freezer. We thought it was huge. It was going to last us years.
Our freezer person kept saying, Deb, there is no way that you'll ever use all this space. There is no way. You're going to have, this is going to take care of you for 5 years. He installed them. Within 4 months, I had called John and said, John, I got to figure out something else. We are out of room for shipping.
With the addition of larger freezers, Deb was running out of room for other equipment. She needed a bigger space. Another downtown location in the same city block came up for sale. They purchased it using one building for production and the other as an office and retail space. Within a year of adding the second building, Sisters Homestyle Entrees was again at maximum capacity. To take their business to the next level, they assembled a team that included their bank, Humboldt County Development Association, and the Iowa Small Business Administration. They plan to consolidate and move their business to one larger location. The new building and equipment would cost over $2 million.
When we were doing all these big numbers, we did numbers where this is where we're at, how are we going to grow, and what steps are we growing to do there. And here's the figures: in 6 months we'll be here, and in 8 months we're going to be here. How are we going to support the bank payments and the taxes and the lights and insurance, all of those things. At that point, I felt that we were a good risk. Absolutely were a good risk.
After months of projections, planning, and paperwork, Deb and Brett secured a loan from the Iowa Small Business Administration and were days away from closing on the loan with the bank.
We were going to close on pretty much it was an open-end loan. They knew the amount that we had to budget for our freezers, our coolers, our electrical, for our plumbing, everything. Everything was a done deal. Had a phone call from the bank, and our banker said, Deb, we need to look at this again. My throat, I just look at what? What's the matter?
On the advice of Deb and Brett's lawyer, they went to the bank the next day to go over the numbers.
I never ever felt so degraded as a woman business person until I was in that meeting. We had the president of the bank there, we had our loan officer there was our lawyer, and Brett and I. And he absolutely, I just felt like he thought I was stupid. What they were doing was playing kind of a game, and so he said, well, to do this loan, this is what we're going to need from you guys. We need $140,000 more from you, and we want this property, and this property. And I looked at my lawyer and I said, I think this meeting's over.
Instead of closing on a business loan that took months to prepare, Deb followed her gut and walked out of the bank. That same day, she called another bank in town. After reviewing the numbers, they lent Deb the amount she needed.
With the bankers, you have to make sure that you know that they're working for you. It's okay to fire people, not just employees, but your professional people too. You need to make sure that they're on your side. What I would have done different of this loan, I would have went to 3 banks and said, this is the project I'm doing. What can you do for me? And I don't think people understand that they have that right to do that. It was a learning curve.
Deb knows that when she started Sisters Homestyle Entrees, she didn't have all the answers, but she wasn't afraid to reach out for help.
There's so many good resources. That's one thing that I learned as even a woman and as an entrepreneur, is that there's so many people out there that will help you. And you have to ask questions, because if you don't know the answer's out there. And when I did all the research, there's answers out there, but you have to be willing to ask.
The current building is a renovated 30,000 square foot space that is preparing over 40,000 meals a month. It's grown through the hard work of Deb Davis and her husband Brett, and has taken a few gut decisions by Deb to get pre-prepared, nutritious meals into Iowa homes. Clarion, Iowa is an agricultural community of less than 3,000 people. It serves the surrounding farming economy through its co-op and soybean seed facility. It also recognizes the importance of agriculture in the community through the Heartland Museum. Across the street are the corporate offices of Hagie Manufacturing. Known for its high-clearance sprayers, Hagie has called Clarion home for nearly 70 years. But it wasn't always an agricultural equipment company. This Iowa entrepreneur story dates all the way back to 1933, when Ray Hagie developed seed corn hybrids for his family's farm.
One thing led to another, and that business grew into what ultimately became Hagie Hybrids. And of course, when you produce seed corn, you have to detassel. You have to remove the pollen source on the seed parent in the production of seed corn. So that was normally done during the war by the wives of the servicemen who were, fighting the war. And they were tall enough they could reach the top of the corn plant.
As World War II was ending and servicemen returned home, it became less patriotic for women to work. Many returned to their roles as housewives. Detasseling became the responsibility of children.
And the kids weren't tall enough to reach the top of the plant. So my dad built a machine, actually a self-propelled platform, that would carry the kids, lift them up, and carry them through the field. That resulted in a high-clearance, self-propelled tractor. In the middle 1940s, 1946-47, they introduced a couple chemicals that were used in the production of seed corn. One to kill weeds, 2,4-D, and another to kill the insects, DDT. But there was no way to really apply it in tall corn. Somebody came to him and said, why don't you just put a spray attachment on that personnel carrier that you make? And so he did.
Ray made some slight adjustments to his personnel carrier, and so was born the very first high-clearance self-propelled sprayer.
The sprayer business really kind of struggled in the very beginning. My dad was a seed corn man, a farmer, and wasn't really tuned into the marketing, the promotional aspect, and that was a concept that really had to be sold.
In the late 1940s, Ray Hagie split his hybrid and manufacturing business into 2 separate companies. Eventually, he sold Hagie Hybrids and focused all of his attention on the manufacturing company.
Ray Hagie was an entrepreneur, but not by design. You know, he just kind of pursued his interest very vigorously. He didn't. He was a very unassuming person. He had a very practical mind. He was not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but he could envision what was right. And just because it wasn't the way you did it, didn't mean it wasn't the direction that you go. He was just the opposite of the people who keep trying to do things the same way and expect different results. He knew that he was had to do something different to get a different result.
John Hagie took over as president of Hagie Manufacturing in 1981. Ray saw that his son had a good sense for business and thought it was just what the company needed moving forward. Even with his son in charge, Ray remained a critical part of the operation.
And he and his small team of people in that engineering shop are the ones that just kept coming up with new ideas and new products and kept the place going. He didn't care about sales, he didn't care about finance, he didn't care about any of the rest of it, and that's where I ended up concentrating my efforts.
As the new CEO, John would soon be put to the test. The farm crisis of the 1980s hit the agricultural industry in devastating fashion.
The early 80s were very, very devastating. In fact, we tried to sell the company, but there was really nobody was interested in ag equipment company at that time.
Hagie's workforce of over 200 employees quickly turned into a crew of less than 40. The farm crisis was so widespread that lenders everywhere were desperately looking for ways out from underneath the growing debt. As financial pressures moved from businesses to lenders, John's bank, despite being local, was losing patience.
They were just wanting us to pay out and get out. They didn't want us as customer anymore. And they were about ready to foreclose. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, the rest of the ag economy kind of went kaput, and all of a sudden we weren't their biggest problem. And so they kind of let things go while they battled these other problems.
That distraction was exactly what they needed. John was able to secure several new orders, including a huge order from DeKalb.
We had the order in hand, but we did not have the resources to build those machines. We needed something in the neighborhood of a line of credit of around $600,000 to get those things rolling and so that we could perpetuate the order. Now, not all of the orders were from one company, but DeKalb was the biggest one. And so our bank was really kind and said, okay, if you get a letter of credit from your customer, we will lend you that money. Now, can you imagine how humiliating it was for me to have to go out to DeKalb, Illinois and sit down with those people and explain to them what the bank was doing? Those people were kind enough to give me that letter of credit. And I took it back to the bank, and they gave us a line of credit of up to $600,000.
John successfully navigated the company through the dark waters of the 1980s, gaining enough business to keep the company afloat. John learned many valuable lessons.
We did learn a lesson, a big time then, and so we became less liberal in our hiring practices, let's put it that way, and added people at a very much slower rate. Depended a lot more on overtime and being more careful about hiring the right people.
Hiring and keeping the right people became very important, not only for John, but for his son, Alan. In 2010, Alan became the third president at Hagie Manufacturing. His top priority was to create a great work environment.
We had a good culture, but we wanted a great culture. A lot of times people think of culture, and they think of culture, we have free pop and we have free popcorn and a lot of things that people would say, well, that's the culture. And they say, that's part of it.
Every company has culture, whether they plan for it or not. Alan provides his employees with extras like healthy, affordable meals in a company cafeteria, a tiki bar for meetings, and fun one-off projects like a pair of custom choppers. It was a struggle for some to look at work as more than just a job. But as time went by, more and more people started to buy into this concept.
Alan has taken the company that was a great company, and he's shifted it to be interesting. A lot of times in our society, we go and we do what we're told. And here at Hagie, we come to this place and we are encouraged and empowered to do things that we seriously would have never thought possible. It's bigger than the product. It's bigger than a job. It's bigger than a paycheck. It is something that I am a part of.
Improving the culture isn't all about empowering your current employees. It's also about getting the right people on the bus. Alan makes sure that every new hire is not only talented, but also fits into the Hagie culture.
Alan was able to bring in some really, really good people. Alan, one of the things that I like about him is that he's not too proud that he won't hire somebody smarter than he is. I'm not sure he can, because I think he's a pretty smart kid, but he isn't threatened by people with talents different than his.
For nearly 70 years, the Hagies have kept their manufacturing company in the family, thanks in part to 3 generations of strong leaders. Ray Hagie was the innovator and the problem solver whose idea changed an industry. Under John Hagie's leadership and business smarts, Hagie Manufacturing weathered the farm crisis of the 1980s and grew for the next 30 years. And now Alan Hagie, the next generation, who learned under the guidance of both his father and grandfather. Alan has already made big changes in the company's culture and created a solid foundation of trust with his employees. The Hagies not only kept it all in the family, they also kept it all in the same community, adding to the already rich agricultural history of Clarion.